Welcome to the Climate and Coordination RCAST, where every week we'll be discussing topics related to all things climate change and RChain's role in the solution. We will be discussing technologies that can adapt and coordinate massive amounts of data like never before, forming social architectures that grow collective intelligence, sharing and evaluating data planetarily, all while maintaining personal privacy and personal data ownership. A new decentralized economy is forming as we move from the third industrial revolution, digitization, to the fourth, decarbonization. By building a co-op, built on a correct by construction, concurrent, scalable solution, RChain is structured to build out the new technology that will be required for a flourishing regenerative planet. Please join us on this journey.
Okay, good morning and welcome to this week's iteration of the Climate and Coordination RCAST. I have quite a few different topics today that cover kind of a wide range of things, but I thought they might be interesting. So the first topic here is, this is from BBC, and this is quite alarming, but don't worry because there's good news later on, just not in the beginning. Right, okay, so this is a report about freshwater fish, and I don't know if it'll be a surprise to anybody, but BBC is reporting extinction, freshwater fish are in catastrophic decline. So I don't feel like we really talk about freshwater ecosystems very much because they're pretty rare on planet Earth. We don't really have that many places that have freshwater ecosystems compared to, ocean saltwater ecosystems. But it says that 16 different species, freshwater fish species, have gone extinct in 1 year, and also that populations of migratory fish have fallen by 75% in the last 50 years. And the craziest thing I read in here was in the past 50 years, populations of larger species known as megafish have crashed by 94%. So it's so interesting to me that, a lot of people are like, oh yeah, things like might go extinct later on, or populations are dwindling or whatever. But like when you talk about 94% of something going away, I mean, that is really urgent. And it's so sad that it's not more well known, the extent of the extinction. So I just wanted to mention this. The report is from something called The World's Forgotten Fishes, and it was done by 16 different conservation groups. And
well, I think that there's a connection between a lot of these ecosystems and the insects. So we know that the insect population has dwindled dramatically, and some of these fish directly eat insects, but generally what happens is there's a connection between the insects and some other part of the ecosystem, and that then impacts the other species such as the fish and the fowl. So we knew it was coming. We knew it was coming very rapidly, but it's here, and I genuinely hope we have enough time to do something about it.
Yeah, so we're going to have to live in a world where there's a lot less diversity of wildlife, and unfortunately that's already happening. Hopefully things will be able to bounce back even from a much reduced sort of plethora of species. But we're definitely in the mass extinction. There's no question about it. So I just wanted to draw attention to that because I just hadn't heard anything about that in the news, and I just, I just felt it was important to mention. Okay. Are there any other comments about that? Okay. Okay, the next article is from The Guardian, and this is about heat. This came out on March 8th, and I wanted to bring this up because I feel it's important to draw attention to the science behind why human beings need to live within a certain temperature. And this was an interesting piece that explained that I had not really understood before. So the piece says, the title is Global Heat pushes tropical regions towards limits of human livability. Rising heat and humidity threatening to plunge much of the world's population into potentially lethal conditions. So obviously it's known that, the hotter areas of the planet are already kind of reaching a sort of breaking point where people are not able to go outside as often, and people dying from heat stroke and other things like that is really common. But what I didn't understand is why this affects human beings like in such a specific window of temperature. It says here, humans' ability to regulate their body heat is dependent upon the temperature and humidity of the surrounding air. We have a core body temperature that stays relatively stable at 37 degrees Celsius, which is 98.6 degrees Fahrenheit, while our skin is cooler to allow heat to flow away from the inner body. But should the wet bulb temperature, a measure of air temperature and humidity, pass 35 degrees Celsius, high skin temperature means the body is unable to cool itself with potentially deadly consequences. If it is too humid, our bodies can't cool off by evaporating sweat. This is why humidity is important when we consider livability in a hot place. That's from a Princeton researcher called Yi Zhang. High body core temperatures are dangerous or even lethal. So I think this is really interesting that there's really like a science behind how human beings cool themselves off. I mean, maybe this is basic information to some people, but I thought that was really fascinating. It goes on to say, dangerous conditions in the tropics will unfold even before the 1.5 degrees Celsius threshold. However, with the paper warning that 1 degree Celsius extreme wet bulb temperature increase could have adverse health impact equivalent to that of several degrees of temperature increase. So I guess they're basically saying that if the humidity goes up even slightly, it's as if the actual temperature went up by a much higher amount. That's what I think it says. The world has already warmed by about 1.1 degrees Celsius on average due to human activity, and although governments vowed in the Paris Climate Agreement to hold temperatures to 1.5 degrees, scientists have warned this limit could be breached within a decade. So the likelihood of us staying to 1.5 is pretty low. I know that a lot of people really want that to happen and push for that to happen. I think that's great, but I think it's probably more likely that we're going to have to try to stay below 2 degrees Celsius of warming. And hopefully it doesn't go higher than that, because that will be really tricky. I just want to say one more thing from this. This has potentially dire implications for a huge swath of humanity. Around 40% of the world's population currently lives in tropical countries, with this proportion set to expand to half of the global population by 2050 due to the large proportion of young people in the region. So yeah, we're not talking about like a few million people in, random super hot rural places. We're talking about half of the world. And that's another thing that I really wanted to call attention to, that it's such a huge portion of the population. So I'm wondering if anybody has any comments on that one.
Well, to me, what that says is that there will be parts of the planet, I guess there already are parts of the planet, where if you don't have access to a building with air conditioning, you will die, and that's going to increase. And so we either have to figure out how to make sure that everybody living in those areas can be inside an air-conditioned bubble, or they'll have to move, or else they will die. So So yeah, basically
Yeah.
that's it, right?
Yeah. No, yeah, that is it. Yeah.
So what we're looking at is gigantic population displacement, which is what I've been talking about for ages.
Yeah.
Yes, and it's in my next article. I'm talking about that.
And it's the kind of thing, oh, really? Okay, that's cool. Yeah, it's the kind of thing where, like, it'll happen once or twice or three times, and then the people who aren't as kind of psychologically attached to their homes will exit, and then there will be people that will just stay because they'd rather die than move, which I don't understand, but not all people are as nomadic as me. But yeah, it's going to be interesting in exponential growth of that problem, as Greg has been saying.
So if you just do the numbers, what's the world population is, what, 7 billion now? Is that right?
Something
I think
like
so,
that.
yeah, maybe slightly higher, but yeah.
Okay, so 40% is 4 times 700 million, so that's 2.8 billion.
Yeah. I know. Yeah, it's not going to be a few 100 million people. Like people, you know what I mean? Like it's going to be like 10 times that.
2.8 billion even if you had half of that, right? So 1.4 billion people.
I know.
Are forced to move. Where are they going to go?
I know.
There
is one potential bright side to that, because a lot of frozen places are going to melt, right? So that brings an opportunity for people to live in places that they couldn't have lived before. But,
with no infrastructure and.
Well, yeah, I'm just saying over time, I'm not saying, people want to move to a semi-frozen hillside, but anyway, yeah, so it's really scary, but there's good news. There's always good news. I have a couple of good news stories, and then I also just wanted to squeeze in one other thing that is especially for you, Greg, that I thought you'd really enjoy. Okay, next story. Sorry, moving kind of quickly here because there's a lot in the news this past week. There's so many things I want to talk about. This is a great story from CNBC, very important reporting on climate envoy, John Kerry. John Kerry is the first ever climate envoy, and my understanding is that the climate envoy is basically a job that is given to the executive, I guess you could say, cabinet. It's within the executive sort of realm of the presidency, and that person, John Kerry, has a lot of power when it comes to policy and decision making and all sorts of things like that. And he's the first person to ever have this job, so I think that is a really positive step. It says here, Biden envoy John Kerry is talking to banks, asset managers about mobilizing capital for clean energy. Okay, if I didn't say it, this is from CNBC. So he says, I'm in discussions right now with a number of our largest asset managers and major banking institutions with hopes that we can begin to understand where the capital could come from and how it could go to these sectors. Kerry said he has no doubt a partnership will emerge between the private sector and the federal government on clean energy. The Biden administration has proposed $2 trillion of investments to help build out a green economy. I'm sure a portion of that is going to go toward relocating people. It says the world invested $501.3 billion in renewable power, electronic vehicles, and other low carbon technologies in 2020. So 500 billion is not a low number. I mean, obviously we need to rapidly accelerate that, but I'm glad that at least that much was spent. It seems like any amount of money is not too much money because you gain so much in terms of job creation, in terms of energy that you can export, in terms of lives saved, I mean, like, I don't know really what the limit would be on spending. That would be too much because it seems like it's really, really good investment. So anyway, John Kerry is in these meetings right now. So I think that's a very positive thing going on. And I'm just also really grateful that the United States has a person that's in this job. because I feel like this should have really happened a long time ago. But somebody that works directly for the White House really sort of coordinating major capital around ESG investing and other stuff like that, I think is going to really help speed up what's going on. So how are there any comments about this?
So I think it's a great news that we're beginning along this path. I also think that it's not just about too little too late. I think that the kind of coordination that has to happen is beyond what we saw with World War II in terms of global coordination. And this is not going to be driven by generals and people like that. I think it has to come from the bottom up. So while I think it's wonderful that we have these efforts, at the end of the day, the kind of change that we have to make is so systemic that it must come from the bottom up. So that's why I've invested years of my life into building a coordination technology that has the scale necessary to do this. And I just think we have to keep reminding ourselves that the problem is much deeper than, oh yeah, let's get John Kerry to take care of it. He'll talk to the banks and they'll get it sorted. It's going to require enormous systemic change and big major questions about global versus local governance that is going to spark so much challenging debate. I love that this is happening. I think there's the picture is much bigger than this.
That's true, but I feel like this piece with having somebody from the U.S. government coordinating ESG type capital mobilization is that is part of it.
Yes, I agree, 100%.
Yeah,
and we really have to continue in redoubling our efforts to support bottom up self-organization.
Yes, and I'm so glad that you said that, because this next story is another good news story, and it is exactly about that. This really made me so happy. Okay, this is from LAist, which is sort of a local LA magazine here. This guy has gotten a little bit famous in the past few days. Headline from March 7th is climate activist picks up all the trash in Eaton Canyon over 589 days. So this guy is called Edgar McGregor. I've never met him in person, but we follow each other on Twitter. I discovered him at least a year ago when he was doing trash pickups, and I think I mentioned him to you, Greg. But basically every single day he goes on Twitter and he posts a video of himself with a bucket picking up trash. And apparently he was always doing it in the same place in Eaton Canyon, which is a very famous hiking sort of location. And anyway, so after 589 days, he finished picking up all of the trash in this area. He kept, walking around. There was no more trash because he had picked it all up. So he got a huge amount of attention for this. And when I first started following him, he really had a very modest size audience. He had 1,000 followers or maybe even less. And his recent video showing that he cleaned up Eaton Canyon after 589 days by himself got over 1 million views on Twitter, which is so cool. And I just wanted to draw attention to this because I think it's so awesome. I mean, obviously not everybody has the time, to go hiking for a couple hours and pick up trash, but I just thought it was so cool that he did this. And I think it's also really cool that, the internet and the media is responding to it. People really care. He's getting a lot of attention for it. I just feel really proud of him because I don't know him, obviously, but I've watched his progress, and I just think it's a really noble and cool thing to do. And really ties into your comments, Greg, about the bottom-up strategies.
Oh, indeed. And I think the story also, it shows other aspects of the way the systemic change has to work. One of the things that I think we forget is how important sustained low-level activity is. So if you talk about transformation in terms of frequency, intensity, and duration, if you just go at something, even for small periods of time, but you do it every day consistently, it's amazing the kind of changes that you can affect. So his effort is exactly that kind of thing. I remember I was so daunted by these major works that I felt I really needed to engage. So I just set about, okay, 3 pages a day without fail. And after a couple of years, like I made it through all these major works that I really wanted to have grappled with. So it's that kind of sustained effort. But it's not knock yourself out every day. It's not marathon every day, but just a little bit, chipping away a little bit, it is transformational. And the other side of his effort is the energy that comes with completion. So when a completion event happens, something is released, and it's very hard to talk about, but we've all felt it. We all know what it feels like. Oh, I completed this major thing. And there's a change inside ourselves, but there's also a change out in the world that's tangible. And that's another thing that we can recognize in this story. So it's a wonderful story. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, it's just so cool because he documented every single day that he did it, rain or shine. There was, a video of him with a bucket full of trash. And so I think that's really inspiring. I hope that a lot more people take this up around their local, park or beach or whatever they have. And actually, there's quite a few litter picking up. They're called different ones, trash pickups, litter pick, but it's getting kind of popular on Twitter to follow these people that post themselves picking up trash every day. There's another one that I follow who's, I believe, in the UK, and they always bring their dog along and they do videos of picking up trash. So it's becoming kind of a trend, and thank God for that. So it's really cool, and it's a great activity. I've done some beach trash cleanups with friends, haven't done 589 of them, but I've done a few. And I think it's a great way to get exercise and to just make your local place a little more beautiful. So anyway, I just wanted to say that. And the final story that I have for today, I don't know if this is really news, but I just thought it was so interesting. And as soon as I saw it, I thought of you, Greg. This is from the Smithsonian. It's actually from 2019, but it's so cool. It says the world's oldest forest has 385 million old tree roots. It says here, a trove of arboreal forest pushes back the origin of modern forests and sophisticated tree roots. So basically, what I'm trying to gather from this, it's a little bit complicated because I'm not, an archaeologist, but it seems like they had a date for trees starting to grow on Earth, and this discovery of this 385 million year old root system predates that. So basically now they're having to move the whole timetable back a little bit. Also, it says Earth has 3 million trees, which is more than the stars in the Milky Way, which I did not know. But apparently there are more trees
3
on
million
Earth.
or 3 billion?
3 trillion.
3 trillion. That's better.
Yeah, 3 trillion trees on Earth, apparently. So that is fascinating to me, that there could be so many of one thing. Anyway, there are pictures here. It's obviously a fossil, it's preserved. And you can see there's some footage from overhead, which is really interesting, where you can see the root systems. And they talk about how a healthy tree requires a healthy root system. And they also talk about just the way that they've studied trees developing and evolving over time, and how this root system to the archaeologists looked very modern. So I guess possibly there's even older root systems that obviously have gone away. Or I'm thinking maybe it's possible, they mention in here, that once the trees, hundreds of millions of years ago, kind of figured out that roots were going to be the right way to help themselves grow and communicate information, that kind of was a very early part of the tree's evolution, was to create this type of sophisticated root system. But I just cannot believe that there's anything on this planet that is that old, but there is, and they discovered it. So I just wanted to share that. So
there's 1 trillion, something like 1 trillion trees in the world?
It says 3 trillion.
So I think I've solved our democracy problem. Just allow each tree to vote, because they do hold the biggest stake, and so therefore they deserve to be heard. And so just allow every tree to vote, and everything's solved.
That's great. I'm sure the Ents would really appreciate that from Middle Earth. Yeah, no, you're right. If the trees could vote, a lot of stuff wouldn't have happened.
Yeah, I wonder how that the number of trees compares to the number of neurons in the brain.
Yeah, because they kind of look similar, those roots.
Yeah, that's a really good example of that compositionality thing, which we keep seeing in nature and in the universe.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Well, it's not really an accident. There's very good reason for this.
Yeah, I feel the most striking one. Here it says the human brain has about 86 billion neurons, and each neuron has an average of 7,000 synaptic connections.
Oh, so you'll get on the order of the same number of synapses as a tree.
Right. Yeah.
What a coinky.
Oh, sorry. What did you say, Darryl?
I just said, what a coinky dink.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, no, it's really fascinating. I think the most striking, one of the most striking examples of that compositionality is the eyeball, the retina, or I'm not sure if that's the iris or what part of the eye, but looks really similar to different galaxies. I think that's a really striking example.
The iris,
yeah. So yes, I'm happy to turn it over if there are more questions people want to ask Greg or Darryl, if you have something you'd like to share today.
Yeah, I have some stuff. Another kind of news item that I've been kind of following this week is the kind of observing the various headlines around this. Bill Gates sounds alarm on Bitcoin's energy consumption. So I guess it gets better, Greg. It gets better. So I guess he said something somewhere, some speech or something, because it kind of, there's all sorts of different headlines on this from some major media outlets and then some minor ones, and I'm finding the headlines kind of more entertaining than anything. But so yeah, basically in an article about Bill Gates rang the alarm bell on Bitcoin's massive energy use and how it is harmful for climate change. But I would say that many of these articles are a kind of hilarious example of throwing the baby out with the bathwater, because they just lump the entire umbrella of crypto into its basket of deplorables. So, it's basically saying Bitcoin is bad. Okay, so let's destroy all crypto. So a lot of these articles kind of just basically say that, right? And Bill Gates seems to also kind of toe that line, although he doesn't quite fully say that. So let's see. Yeah, the first article I read was from Forbes, and that headline was Bill Gates sounds alarm on Bitcoin's energy consumption. Here's why crypto is bad for climate change. And another headline. Bill Gates advised against investing in Bitcoin, saying cryptocurrencies damage the environment. Another one. So another headline is actually, a little bit more accurate. It says Bill Gates slams Bitcoin's impact on the environment. And then a subheading that says, in a recent interview with the New York Times, that's where it came from. The tycoon claimed that the production of Bitcoin as it currently exists is hurting the planet. So that's a little bit better.
Slightly better, yeah, slightly better.
Yeah. So, but okay. So, all irony aside, the main sentiment about the harm of Bitcoin for humanity, if it were to become the world's currency, is very real. And if we really stop to contemplate the implications, it must be stopped, at least until we as a planet eradicate enough carbon-based energy sources that it no longer poses a threat to the future of humanity.
There's no question about this. This is so obvious.
Yeah. Sometimes
going on.
Okay. Yeah, because sometimes we, I think, like for me at least, I don't really fully stop to fully contemplate the implications. It's like kind of important. So I have a question that kind of stems from our conversation on Wednesday in the debrief. You were pointing out that there's a governing body for Bitcoin. You could say, I guess.
No. I mean, I wouldn't say that. There's an organization that Bitcoin is a lot more organized than we think it is. That's what I was saying.
Okay. So, but there is some body represented at bitcoin.org and maintained and developed on GitHub, as I understand it now, right? So
the core code base that is used by the miners is residing in GitHub. So there's a central repository, and there's an organization that is deciding on which pull requests make it into the main branch.
Okay. So let's imagine this fictitious science fiction future where the body decides a pull request that says that Bitcoin needs to shift from proof of work to CBC Casper. Is that a possible, like, if the GitHub repository that is kind of like the main Bitcoin fork as it exists now, whatever or not fork, but it's the original Bitcoin, would it be powerful enough to even make that kind of a change for Bitcoin's protocol? Or would it be like some kind of major fork that becomes like the de facto Bitcoin? Or like, how does that work?
So that's a great question. But you have to understand that the developers are only one part of a triumvirate, right? So the triumvirate is the developers, the miners, and the traders, the Bitcoin users, right? And obviously, if Bitcoin has no users, then the miners stop being interested, and so the developers stop being interested. Likewise, if the developers put out a change and the miners look at that and they go, no thanks, then that's kind of the end of that story.
Okay. So here's what I could really easily see happening. I think at some point, and we're already starting to see this with the pressure on Elon Musk from some environmentalists, including Bill Gates. I think that there will be at some point, due to the massive rise in the influence of the decarbonization economy, that it will become harmful to a company's portfolio to own dirty Bitcoin. And if that company can simply transfer those tokens to a green Bitcoin, they would be incredibly incentivized to do that. So
yeah, that's been the plan, right? That was the plan I recognized in 2015.
Okay.
Yes.
But
yes, that's the idea.
But I guess what I'm talking about is like a green Bitcoin. Like Bitcoin itself would become.
No, that doesn't work. No, it's
okay.
not. The problem is you're associating your look, it's not Bitcoin, it's proof of work. So Ethereum 1.0 also has the same problem. Dogecoin also has the same problem. So it's not Bitcoin, it's all of the crypto that use proof of work.
Well, yeah, I mean, as far as I understand it now, the major ones are Ethereum and Bitcoin, and Ethereum does have a plan in 2022 to move to Ethereum 2.0, which is proof of stake. So then it would just be Bitcoin, really. Like Dogecoin, I don't think is going to go anywhere, but like, so then you just have Bitcoin as the proof of work.
It's the king, but there's lots of other technologies that are still burning electricity. But the point is, by the time you leave proof of work and you move to proof of stake, there's so many other architectural opportunities that you might call it Bitcoin, but it isn't Bitcoin anymore. And none of the miner infrastructure ports over.
Yeah, I know. I understand what you're saying there. I understand.
So either the miners there are some miners who've been seeing this coming and are slowly transitioning to diversifying, right? And there are other miners who are Bitcoin maximalists and are trying to do things like renewables for their energy sources and that sort of thing. But that's a Band-Aid on the problem.
Yeah, probably, unless like the world can shift to some kind of renewable resource.
That's unethical?
That's a mistake, because energy transference of that kind generates heat. That's why so many data centers have cooling problems, or they're on barges in the middle of the ocean.
Yeah, it's crazy some of the extents that people are already going to mine Bitcoin.
Yeah. Well, no, it's not just mining Bitcoin. I mean, it's like, like data centers, like Google's data centers and Facebook data centers and Apple data centers, they all have cooling problems.
I see.
So if you were to take the proof of work up to scale so that it isn't just a few million traders, right? But you actually had, 100 million traders or 1 billion traders using the currency all the time, you turn the planet into a cinder. And it has nothing to do with whether the energy supply is green or not.
Yeah, because you're saying on the short term, the heat is too much anyway.
Yes, that's correct.
But just from a philosophical perspective, I'm just curious, anybody who wants to answer this, do you think it's ethical that say that the planet reaches 100% green energy? Probably not possible. There's always going to be some dirty energy somewhere, but let's just pretend. Do you think it's ethical to say now we don't have to worry about energy consumption because we can use as much as we want? Or do you think we're always going to be energy conscious, even if we do solve the green energy problems, say 100 years in the future, or hopefully sooner?
Well, at the end of the day, your use of energy is directly connected to heat. So if you don't want to have major heat imbalances, you have to be conscious of the use of energy and its relationship to heat. So, I mean, the short answer is yes, you have to be conscious no matter what.
I see.
I guess I'm still kind of wondering whether there is a possibility that the that Bitcoin could make a shift to proof of stake. I'd never thought of this before, but now that you brought this up on Wednesday, it kind of made me go, well, if there is some type of a...
Why do you call it Bitcoin then? Now you just seem to be capitalizing on a brand name.
Well, maybe that's the shift that would have happened. I guess I'm curious about how that shift would happen then. Like, you know, right now, by far, Bitcoin is the most popular usage of crypto, let's just say, and if it continues on its trajectory as a form of kind of digital gold, not necessarily, you know, a currency that people can utilize in their daily lives, but it's a form of storage of value, and it continues to become popular, just like it's replaced gold as this kind of store of value for people. Could it, in that incarnation, be able to shift to proof of stake?
So again, there's a lot less centralization than you might think, right? So Bitcoin is placed at this funny tilting point between centralization and decentralization. It's not nearly as decentralized as people think it is, but there is no legal entity that you can point to and say, do this. Or you will be faced with consequences. And you can point to a bunch of miners, you can point to a bunch of exchanges, but there isn't. You can point to the developers, but you can't point to a single thing and say, you know, do this or you will face economic or other kinds of legal consequences.
Yeah, okay, I understand that, but like, I guess what I'm talking about is when kind of, like I was mentioning before, like market sentiment becomes so strong for people to, you know, it becomes harmful to their portfolios to hold dirty Bitcoin because it's, you know, harming the planet. And so
then what they'll do is they'll go to other solutions that are already well underway, right? That's the idea.
But
right? So Bitcoin is so far behind, right?
Yeah. But at some point, though, it's super far behind, but it holds vastly the largest, massively amount of the money. So the people who are holding all this Bitcoin would be incentivized to keep the Bitcoin, but make it change, you know, so that rather than having to sell their Bitcoin and move to RChain or whatever, they would just go, well, let's just use RChain's Casper proof of stake CBC protocol, and we'll just apply that to Bitcoin. Is that a possibility?
Yeah. I mean, everything is possible, but it's pretty far fetched, right? I mean,
okay.
Why would you go back? Why would you want to go backwards from something that is many times bigger than just a payments network to a payments network?
Yeah, well, you're exactly, yeah. I see exactly what you're saying. The only reason why is to hang on to your money. But if you can easily shift your money to like, you know, an RChain network that not only, you know, does all the, you know, simple things that Bitcoin does, but, you know, a universe of more that will help save the planet, then you know, that's probably it. It's just, it would be too easy for these people to just shift their Bitcoin to something else on these exchanges. So.
Yeah, that's. I mean, the cost of the shift, and the cost of an early shift is going to be much lower than the cost of a later shift. But the cost of the shift in terms of convenience, like you have to think about the coordination cost of changing Bitcoin,
right?
And we've seen over and over again that the Bitcoin community doesn't budge.
Right.
Right. They are very, very slow. And there is no organized deliberation, right? So, which is that was one of the major inspirations for the co-op, was watching the organic process that Bitcoin was going through. Going, this is never going to work. This is not even as agile as the U.S. Congress.
Right.
Oh God.
So
that's really saying something.
So like a more likely outcome would be it's just too little too late. So Bitcoin at some point in time, then there will be a point where Bitcoin, the Bitcoin GitHub repository, there will be pull requests that will be saying like, holy shit, we got to change.
Yeah, something like that. I'm not quite sure how. It may just be abandoned, right?
Right.
It may be that the miners just move over to the miners that survive just move over to sustainable technologies,
to staking or to some kind of staking model.
Staking is one. Again, there's the avalanche model. There's lots of models out there. There's not just one, and there will be more and more as time goes on that are better and better. So it's really important for a project to have the consensus part be modular, right? You want to be able to pop out, think of it like a component on a computer board. You want to be able to pop out the consensus component and replace it with a new component that does the consensus part.
Okay. This actually brings me up to the next question I was going to ask if there's time. I was going to ask you a little more about Casper and CBC Casper, and I'm kind of confused about where Casper is at as far as how useful it is for our consensus model currently, and what work needs to be done if it's not there yet.
I'm so confused. We have implemented Casper. It's running. We've had it on mainnet for a year. You know that.
Okay. So yeah, I'm sorry. Like it's real pedestrian question, but every week you're working on Casper Standup publicly. It's exciting to observe from afar in my my realm. And so these are all what would you call a lot of it
is not just Casper, right? I'm using it more as the RChain research, right?
Okay.
There's like a big chunk of the last several Casper stand-ups weren't about Casper at all. They were all about zero knowledge proofs.
Okay, I see.
Right, and getting the ZK stuff into Rolang in a nice, crisp way, but also that respects the foundations of the discipline.
Okay. So these are kind of more about improvements to not just the consensus model, but other improvements that are more Venus related to RChain as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, if people want to understand the technology space that RChain is operating in, the Casper Standups is where it's at.
Cool.
Right, that's the leading edge of RChain research.
I see.
Yeah, so several times I've spoken about the work on the type theory stuff, which has all kinds of practical implications. I know people, are probably their ears are closed to what I'm saying, but the changes that come with the types capability will completely change society forever. The way we do medicine will change. The way we build airplanes will change. The way we build bridges will change. All of these major aspects of human infrastructure will all change as a result of this types work. It will also have implications for mathematics and computer science and engineering. But in terms of tangible things that that people will feel in their daily lives, all of those kinds of things, like delivering cures or searching for cures, searching for flaws in an airplane design, all of that will change as a result of the types work. So that's why it's important to talk about this stuff because that's a part of RChain research.
And behavioral types. I've heard so many of the elders in RChain kind of trumpeting that. That has nothing to do with Casper, right?
The way it's connected to Casper is that Casper is a program. In particular, it's a kind of program that's called a protocol. And so you could write down that protocol in Rolang, and then you could type that protocol using the behavioral types.
Okay.
So then you could check whether the particular Rolang implementation that is running Casper is correct according to the type level specification. So that's one way it connects. Another way it connects is you could imagine that RChain is much more decentralized, and there are many different implementations of the node, not just one implementation. And because there are many different implementations, you want to know whether or not a given implementation really does Casper, or maybe it does something else. So you have a Casper spec that is a type, and you say, okay, well, if you are running Casper, then your code type checks according to this type. Show me your code, and then I'll type check it.
Okay, so if I'm understanding you right, then RChain could be running all sorts of different consensus models.
Yeah, but so that's another step. But I was just simply talking about, imagine that there's one consensus model, but many implementations.
Okay.
So you could imagine that, someone in the UK writes a Haskell implementation of the Casper code.
Okay. Right.
Or even you don't even have to go to different code bases. You could just simply say someone in the UK writes an optimized Rolang implementation of the CBC Casper protocol. Now, how do we know? Like, and their claim is this optimization gives them, X times speed up. So and you want to trust them. You want to say, okay, that's good news, wonderful. Let's just make sure it's still Casper and not something else. You've left all these other parts on the side here. We thought they were doing something important when you rebuilt the car. So let's just make sure that it still does Casper things. So you type check it, and if it type checks, then you can kind of go, okay, great. When I run this with the other nodes that are also running Casper, it will play nicely.
I see.
This is a fantastic place to end. I'm so sorry.
You're absolutely right. I was thinking that.
So thank you, everybody, for a great discussion today. I'm sure we can talk more about this next time. Make sure that you are subscribed to RChain on YouTube and follow RChain on social media. And if you'd like to be a member, you can do that at rchain.coop. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you all.
Thanks, everybody.